An important skill for a designer is the ability to empathise with clients and their needs. And the most important thing to remember as a designer is that you're not an artist. You're not there to fulfil your own creative desires. You're there to produce a product that's being paid for by a client that is going to be most appropriate for what they need, most successful for them. So that's the starting point you must look at any job from. Now, when you first start a job with a client or you first meet a client, it's important to get relevant background information. So within Splinter we have both set questionnaires that we sit down and take a client through. So for instance, if a client's come in looking for corporate identity, this questionnaire will talk about the obvious things like do you have a logo at the moment? Are there any colours that you like? Are there any kind of symbolism that sums up your company? But then we try and go further and look into the background of that organisation. So we're asking them, who do you think are your competitors? What do you think are their identities? You know, how is their identity successfully communicating the kind of things that you might want to communicate? But then we also like to go a bit deeper and ask kind of more off-the-wall questions that just help us understand the client and their aspirations. So we ask them, you know, if your company was an animal, what kind of animal would it be? Because you know, because if it was a crocodile, obviously we want something quite aggressive and powerful in the image that we'll be getting across. So we would take the client through this process. Either we send this document to you or sit down and work through it with them, and then we'll find that we'll usually have a brainstorm within the company, or a creative thinking session within the company with a number of designers, and they'll look at the issues put forward by the client and start coming up with ideas to actually deal with the problem. Then usually the next stage is to present the client with 2 or 3 initial ideas and take them through try and gauge their reactions, try and work out why things within the idea are working, why they aren't, and then take the next step forward, which is if the client turns around and says, I hate all of it, then you have to fundamentally think again and maybe re-question the client on what it is they're after, because probably there's something that we've misunderstood about what their aims are. Once we've got to a point where the client can start identifying things they like, we can then start mocking things up so they can actually see how these designs are going to work in reality. It's very important from a business point of view as a designer to make sure that you're getting agreement from the client all the way along. We call them sign-off stages. So for instance, once we've done these initial designs, if the client turns around and says, yes, I like that one, develop that one further, then it's very important that we get them to sign a document to say, yes, that's what I've said, because one of the most infuriating things in the world is the client who might change their mind later on, and you have to start the whole process again. So if it's very important to get sign-offs throughout the design process so that you know where you stand and that the client cannot then go back on what they've actually said about the work you've been doing. So fundamentally you'll go through X amount of these sign-off stages until you get to the final artwork and the client signs that artwork off, and for instance if it's a print project it goes to print, or if it's a website it goes live. Another important thing that we try to do as an organisation to ensure that we're developing and learning as we go on is at the end of any project we'll get feedback from the client, and if it's a large enough project we'll also try and gather information about what benefits the client got from the project. So for instance, if it's a health marketing campaign, whether X amount of people within the area it was targeted at saw the campaign or went along to a hospital, that kind of thing.